And welcome back to Everything is Interesting, the channel to which catchphrases are a foreign language. Today, A is for ants and Armageddon. Oh yes, ants, those six-legged little soldiers who wander around in our gardens, making hills and other fun things, mainly hills. So, what do we know about ants? Well, usually, if you go on the fact websites, they'll all be like, "Ooh, an ant can lift 100 times its own weight. Isn't that interesting?" And I guess it's kind of interesting, but that's all I can say about that. Basically, yes, they can. So, before I don't want to talk about that, because everybody knows that already. I will mention a specific species of ant, because there's lots of different kinds of ants. I think we all sort of agree on this and understand that. But there's a specific species of ant called the bullet ant. And a bullet ant is famous for being not a bullet. You don't shoot it out of a gun, although that could be pretty cool. It is incredibly painful to get stung by. If you piss off a bullet ant, and the bullet ant decides that it wants to sting you, then you will notice. It is, in fact, it is the top-level scale of pain, according to one of my favourite scientific scales of all time, the Schmidt's pain scale. And this is where we start. We start about the bullet ant's pain. The level of pain of a bullet ant in the Schmidt scale. Now, scientific scales are everywhere. Every time we want to quantify something in science, we need some kind of scale to put a number to something. We are number people, number creatures, and we kind of want that. Some scales are really scientific and boring and dull, like the Richter scale, which is just like, a logarithmic scale that measures how much energy is released by an earthquake. Ooby dooby dooby. And other scales are deeply, deeply unscientific, like the Beaufort scale of wind, which, if you don't know that, is hilarious. The Beaufort scale of wind is the vaguest scale in the world. It's just like, a Beaufort level 1 means that, Beaufort level 3 or something means that umbrellas get slightly harder to open, stuff like that. It ain't no science. The Schmidt pain scale is absolutely delightful because it is pure poetry in pain form. Or should I say pure pain in poetry form? I don't know. You'll see. It is made by a deeply eccentric guy called Schmidt, of course, who decided to make a scale for the pain of various insect bites. And he describes these pains. It's a bit like the Beaufort scale. It doesn't have any scientific backing aside from just his opinion. But he, eccentrically enough, decided to let himself get bitten and stung by various insects from around the world and describe how they feel. And he has this really poetic, almost like wine-tasty kind of way of describing pain. It's fantastic, and I'm going to have to tell you some of these. I'll tell you that pain scale 1 is something called a sweat bee. And he describes pain scale 1 as light, ephemeral, almost fruity, as if a tiny spark has singed a single hair on your arm. Isn't that cute? So that is just like a little, almost fruity. You see what I mean with the wine connection. The fire ant, which is of course also an ant, to those of you paying attention to words, the fire ant is a 1.2 on the Schmidt scale, and that goes like this. Sharp, sudden, mildly alarming, like walking across a shag carpet and reaching for the light switch. In case you don't know what a shag carpet is, it's one of those big flat cat things, where it's when you sort of drag your feet through that, you charge your feet up with static electricity, and when you touch the light switch, you get a little quick, unexpected shock. And that is apparently what a fire ant feels like. So let's move to point 2. The yellow jacket is a 2.0 on the Schmidt pain scale, and it is hot and smoky, almost irreverent. Imagine W.C. Fields extinguishing a cigar on your tongue. Now, W.C. Fields, for those of you who don't know, is an old-school comedian, like a really old-school comedian from the 1940s or something. I believe that's when the Schmidt pain scale was being made. But he is like a comedian, and he always had a cigar. So just imagine that, and then you can sort of get what he's trying to say. It's, almost irreverent, almost like a joke. Just so painful it's almost a joke. I like that. So let's quickly move on to the 3.0, which is the red harvester ant, which is bold and unrelenting. Someone is using a drill to excavate your ingrown toenail. My oh my. And that doesn't sound very nice, does it? The paper wasp is also 3.0, but it is a different kind of 3.0. It goes caustic and burning with a distinctly bitter aftertaste, like spilling a beaker of hydrochloric acid on a paper cut. You can almost feel it, can't you? Paper cuts are so easy to imagine. We've all had them, and they're just really nasty buggers. So spilling acid on a paper cut does not sound fun, does it? And now we finally get to the bullet ant. A 4.0 on the Schmitz pain scale. It does not get worse than this. It is pure, intense, brilliant pain, like firewalking over flaming charcoal with a 3-inch rusty nail in your heel. Now that takes a certain kind of person to enjoy, let us put it that way. And that doesn't sound very fun at all. So that is the bullet ant. The bullet ant is unrelenting, and also apparently it lasts for like 12 hours or so. It does not sound fun. So the bullet ant, to get into one of the more interesting features of an ant, is apparently able to sting you, shall we say, like arse, with its little stinger. And the reason it can do that is not just because it's an arsehole. It's because it is defending the hive. And that is what we're really talking about with ants. Ants, the coolest things about ants is that they have something called eusocial behavior. And that is like ultra-social behavior. Like it is madness. It is like crazy-ass Borg life. Borg being, of course, from Star Trek. I might be comparing ants to Star Trek. It's a bit strange, but here we are. So, what is eusocial behavior? Well, eusocial behavior is basically where the individuals of a colony of ants kind of stop behaving like individuals. They lose their individuality. They have no hopes and dreams. All they have is a role, and that role must be fulfilled at all costs. And it's like the whole, like, anthill, I suppose, is one giant organism doing its thing. And that's called eusocial behavior. It is found not only in ants, in other species as well, which I will get back to. But let's just talk about exactly what these anthills can do. Anyone who's seen an anthill sees that it does look as if it's got a plan. And, you know, they're sort of teaming around. And they do. They have roles. They have, like, almost a caste system of roles where certain ants have certain roles and they must sort of fulfill these behaviors. There are worker ants whose job is to work, as in carrying around all these leaves and junk for the hive, which is handy because they can lift 100 times their own body weight, did you know? All that. So we've got all that stuff. But then we also have the guards, like the goons, who will beat you up if you try to get close to the hive. We have all kinds of other things. I can't remember, the drones and all this kind of stuff. And of course, the famous one, inside the middle of the hive, or the hill, we have the queen. Not the Queen of England, that would be very misplaced queen, I would say, but the queen of the hive. And inside there, the queen is just this weird ultra ant. If you look at pictures of queen ants, they're just big and fat and weird. And the reason they're big and fat and weird is because, for one thing, they get fed with a junk load of food gathered up by the workers. And the reason they get so much food is because they have to lay all the eggs for the hive. They are basically the mother of everyone. And their job is essentially just to sort of crank out new ants in a steady stream of eggies, which is, you call them the queen. It does sound a little bit unpleasant. You don't really have much else to do, but that's what goes on. Now, there are other females, of course, female ants, but they're all sterile. They can't make ants. Only the queen can make the ants. So it's all very sort of inbred, I would say. That's a bit rude, but I don't think the ants care. The ants don't have much of a problem with that, I've understood. It's not a huge deal for ants to be inbred for some reason. I'm not sure why. But there you go. I am not an insect expert, I'm afraid. But, yeah. So that's fascinating, right? Because, I mean, we all have various levels of social animals. Like, we have the completely solitary animals like snakes and stuff who don't give a crap about each other. And then we have people like humans, I'm doing it again, just like elephants, like animals like humans who are absolutely social. And we do, to a degree, sort of give ourselves roles in the society, but they're not biological. It's not like you're born to be an accountant. Like, genetically, there's nothing else you can do with your brain than just, do taxes. That is not how humans work at all. We have choice. Yes, you can be whatever you want to be, as we know, which is not true. I want to be a unicorn. Can I be that? No. And that's because we are not a eusocial species, and I want to be born a unicorn. I'm in a very strange mood today. Okay, on I go. So, So humans have this sort of like, we have a social construction around us, but we don't have like genetically generated gods. And we certainly don't have queens in the sense that ants have queens. That would be horrifying. Can you imagine if the Queen Elizabeth of England was this monstrous big fat woman who just gave birth to every British person? Good God! Imagine the Queen's speech on Christmas. It'd be like, "Hello, children," and we'll all be like, "Hello, mummy." And then, of course, would we even watch TV? Would we be genetically able to watch TV? Maybe we'll just be carrying around 100 times our own body weight in fish and chips for this massive Queen. Dear God. Thank God we're not like that, eh? So yes, that is the interesting aspects of eusocial behavior. And we find it not only in ants, as I say, but also in bees. And in other species, bees are famously for it because they can do really cool stuff. They gather nectar, of course. So they have all kind of dancing moves. They have like bee boogie, where they sort of, when a bee finds some honey, it will go back to the hive and it'll like dance. It'll do a little jig to sort of show the other bees where the honey is. It's like a GPS crossed with disco music. Very confusing, but it works. And the other bees find the honey based on that. But all these animals, all these eusocial animals, are pretty much all gathered in within a specific species of insect called the Hymenoptera. And I want to just quickly have an aside of the word Hymenoptera, because it's just linguistically interesting, I think. It's called Hymenoptera. Hymen means, membrane, so we have this, the membrane, and the optera bit is exactly not how to sort of say it. You shouldn't be taking the word apart like that. We all want to, as at least British people. We're not all British here, are we? But I am. If we have this, if we hear the word Hymenoptera, we kind of say, okay, hymen is the first bit, and then optera is the next bit. So it's got to do something with eyes or something like optics, something. But no, we separate that word out completely wrong. It should be separated as hymeno. That's the first bit. And then ptera, because ptera means wing. Ptera means wing. We know this from that wonderful dinosaur-ish kind of animal, which isn't a dinosaur, but whatever. The pterodactyl, Pte, whatever. And that is, of course, the winged dactyl. Don't ask me what a dactyl is, please. I should know that, but I can't think of it right now. So we have that. So it's actually hymenoptera, so like it is a membraned wing, and that makes a lot more sense, doesn't it? But we have another place where this pter shows up, and that's in the word helicopter. Another kind of insect, you might say, if you are a little bit baffled by things that can fly. A helicopter is actually not to be separated out as heli and copter, as we kind of want to do. It's like we tend to think those are the two components of the word, right? We also like, abbreviate it like a copter, because we're really cool, right? But that's completely wrong. It should not be separated out into heli and copter. It should be separated out into helico and pter. And helico means like helical. It means like a spiral, which is moving upwards, I suppose. When you call it a spiral staircase, it's actually a helical staircase. So a spiral is like a... No, I don't want to draw it on my art, or do I? No, I don't. But like going like that, So a spiral is in the same place, and a helix is going this way up. So something is helical if it goes upwards while it does so. Right. So a helicopter is something where the wings do that, which is of course exactly what a helicopter's wings does. So it's actually a pretty basic name for that flying machine. It is essentially describing how it works. But anyway, I'm getting distracted. Just I thought you might want to know that a helicopter should be like separated out into helico and pter, because why not? So I said almost all animals that are known to have these eusocial aspects are Hymenoptera. But there is one interesting, fascinating exception in mammals. Hell yes, the mammals that we are and love. There are actually eusocial mammals, and they live in Somalia, and they're called naked mole rats. Now, none of that sounds very attractive, does it? If you had a Tinder profile, you would not put "I am a naked mole rat" on it. It doesn't sound great. And it's not. If you look up what a naked mole rat looks like, they ain't charming. They are not a pretty little bunch. They are, as you can imagine, they look like rats, pretty much like this guy does. They look like rats. I'll put a tail on it just for that. They look like rats, and they are naked, as in they don't have any fur, And they're also moles, so they have teeth that you do not want to have. Teeth that you would go to an orthodontist for to fix very quickly if you were a human. So they are not attractive guys. But they are eusocial. And that means they have all that stuff I just mentioned before. They have a queen. They have this giant, fat, naked mole rat lady who gives birth to all the mole rats in the hive. I was about to say. Hive is a wrong word, because there's only. It goes up to about 300 of these little naked mole rats that live underground in one of these sort of colonies. But still, having 300 kids is pretty wild, right? So you have this massive queen, and we have the workers, we have the guards, we have everything that nature has invented for Hymenoptera, like bees and ants, and taking it into mammal land, which is deeply fascinating. They're not in any way endangered. There's lots of them in Somalia, and they survive in the deserts of Somalia by tunneling like fuck around everywhere to try and figure out somewhere to go. And when they go and find a tuber, they find like a huge root that lives underground in this desert climate. And when I say huge, I mean huge. I mean thousands of times the weight of a single mole rat. They find that, and because they're not ants, and they can't lift each other, they probably can, but they can't lift 1,000 times their own body weight, obviously. So they just leave it there, and they just sort of burrow into it and eat from it, and transport the food to the big queen and stuff, and keep it alive. So one of those tubers, once they find it, it can keep the whole colony alive for months. But it's kind of a cute way to live, isn't it? Anyhow, there's one thing I have to mention about the naked mole rats, which is fantastic, and that is that they have problems with inbreeding. This is the problem with inbreeding, because mammals, you can't have, like, the problem with being, the mother to everyone you ever met means that also your next set of lovers will be your sons. And moral aspects aside, I don't think that the naked mole rats really care about morals, but it's not great genetically, because you start getting inbreeding, and inbreeding is not a good thing. So to solve this problem, there is a specific role in this eugenic society of mole rats. Not only do we have the workers, whose job is to work and carry the tuber stuff, not only do we have the guards, whose work is to sort of defend the colony against snakes and whoever, but we also have something which is very nicely called the dispersers. Now, how do I even begin with this? The dispersers are born horny. Born intentionally, absurdly horny. They're always guys. They are one walking pile of hormones. All they want to do is have sex. And they also want to run away as quickly as possible from the hive. And they are also really, really fat. They're fed up with, given lots of food by the workers, so that when they're ready and fat and horny, they escape from the colony and just rush randomly out into the desert in the vain, horny hope of finding another colony with another queen that it can have sex with. Will it find one of those? Who knows? It is completely random stuff. It is a horniness missile shot out of the colony in an attempt to find somewhere else to put the genes. And the queen, on the other hand, is totally ready for these horniness missiles. Any queen in a colony of these naked mole rats will be waiting for one of these guys to show up. She will, if she has to, mate with her own family. That's because, sometimes that's what these eusocial species just have to do. But if a horniness guy shows up, she's just like, hell yes, come to me, baby. And that's how they solve the problem of inbreeding. So that is very, very strange. Can you imagine, again, if this is humans, right? If humans were a eugenic species and this is how things were done. So we have the Queen of England, who has, all the British people as her children. And she's sitting around in Buckingham Palace getting, stuffed full of fish and chips every day by the workers. And then suddenly some guy from France just comes rushing into the court and says, "Oh, bonjour, monsieur, mademoiselle." And he's super, super horny. And the Queen is just like, "Oh, finally!" And they just bang massively, immediately. And that creates the next generation of British people. Can you imagine? Maybe it's good that we're not really eugenic, that's a completely different term. We're not eusocial species. It might be a little bit confusing. Well, we'd be used to it, I suppose. Right, enough about ants. Let's move on to Armageddon. Now, Armageddon. What can I say about Armageddon? I can say two things. I can tell you that if you look up Armageddon on Google, the first thing you will have to get past is the movie. So we have to get past the movie before we can talk about the rest. I won't spend too much time on the movie because the movie, directed by Michael Bay in 1998, starring Bruce Willis and Ben Affleck and a whole host of other goodies, is terrible. It is a ridiculous movie, from a scientific standpoint at least. I will tell you the premise very quickly. There's an asteroid the size of Texas, that's like 1,000 kilometers across, right? Suddenly hurtling towards Earth, and NASA had not noticed it, which is, again, already there. We have to stop and be like, wait, 1,000 kilometers wide? That's like the fourth of the size of the moon or something. We might have spotted that a bit before. Because they spot it as like 18 days until it hits Earth or something. It's just ridiculous. But, okay, fine. Forget that part. And what they decide to do is they say, oh, we've got to blow this asteroid up, and we'll do it with a hydrogen bomb, which we put inside the middle of this asteroid. Two things. If it's 1,000 kilometers across, how are you going to get 500 kilometers into it? I mean, no way. I mean, with no drill at all can you get even close to that. I mean, the deepest hole that we've ever dug in Earth is 8 kilometers deep, and it's a tiny little spindly hole, not thicker than this pen, and it goes 8 kilometers down, and that is the wildest thing that we've ever been able to do as a human. So 500 kilometers into an asteroid with a deadline of a not lot of days? No. The next thing, of course, is that the hydrogen bomb required to actually blow this thing up. Actually, the plan is not to blow it up, but to blow it into 2 pieces, so both pieces go either side of the Earth, like whew, it just does does the splits kind of thing. The power required from a bomb to create that kind of explosion is about 1,000 times greater than the biggest hydrogen bomb ever created by humans. So let's just say that ain't gonna happen, and that's okay. We'll skip that. The premise of the movie, though, however, is somehow even more ridiculous, because what they do is they say, oh my god, we have to dig a hole in the asteroid. What we need are astronauts. No, actually not. We don't need astronauts. We need oil drillers from Earth, of course. Where else? But from, just not astronauts, but people who are used to using a drill. Because that's the hard part, right? Of going into space and landing on an asteroid and putting a bomb in it. The hard part is drilling the hole. All the rest of it, I mean, come on, how hard can that be? So, instead of taking astronauts and training them to drill a hole, which would be the obvious thing to do, they train oil drillers to become astronauts in like 10 days. Let me tell you something. Being an astronaut is the hardest thing in the world. There's no way. I'm not trying to be snobbish about oil drillers, not the slightest. I couldn't drill a hole for oil if I wanted. But I'm just telling you, you can't become an astronaut from an oil driller in 10 days. It's just not going to occur. I'm so sorry, but it is. But it is in the movie, because good old, what's his name? Bruce Willis and his pals, of course, save the day through a bunch of unbearably unrealistic problems until they finally, save the day. Sorry, spoiler, the Earth does not get destroyed in the movie, right? I know that's a big shock to everyone watching a Hollywood film. My god, the heroes do it! Can you believe it? Even though it was close at the time, you thought they might not? No! You are kidderizing me. But no, sorry. So, terrible film. But why is it called Armageddon? That's kind of what I want to say. Where does this word even come from? Well, to know that, we should actually let us inspire from Armageddon itself. Because let's remember what Armageddon is. Armageddon is an attempt to dig into a huge pile of rubble in order to save civilization from destruction. So why don't we dig in to the ancient past and see where civilization started, shall we? That we might find something there. If we do so, we discover that civilization begins... it's not super easy to sort of define exactly when civilization begins, but if you talk about when do we start making farms, when do we start domesticating crops, when do we start having writing, when do we start doing pottery, all these things which are kind of defined as the beginnings of what we can call recognizable culture, right? If we look at that, it all seems to happen around something called the Fertile Crescent, an area in the Middle East that starts down in Africa, down by the Nile Delta, and then sort of like swoops over Saudi Arabia until it comes to the Persian Gulf. So a nice little crescent there called the Fertile Crescent, and it seems everything happens there. The reason it happens there, it's alleged at least, is that we have people from the south which are continuously dealing with droughts from the Sahara and like fertile periods in the Sahara as well, and they're kind of like being forced northwards by climate. And from the north we have the mountains, where similar problems occur with climate changes and stuff, and they're forced southwards. So we have these two various peoples fighting for resources, and that's one of the best drivers of, you know, innovation and that kind of stuff. So that's why the people who actually manage to find a home in the Fertile Crescent seem to be quite creative with survival in general, and they come up with all these new cool things like agriculture and writing and things like that. So that's pretty important. Why am I mentioning this? Well, because if you look at the Fertile Crescent, if you look at a map, you'll see that the west side of it has a really narrow little slender bit going between Africa and the Middle East through modern-day Israel. A tiny little slender bit, and of course all travel and stuff in the old days would go through that part, and that means we find some of the really oldest civilizations just there, because it's such a strategically good place to be. We find something, you know, remnants of ancient cultures, and one of the places you find is a place called Medigo. Yes, Medigo. Now, Medigo is a mountain, and it's a relentlessly interesting mountain, because it's not a mountain at all. It's a pile of garbage. Yes, again, the movie Armageddon rears its ugly head, because the movie Armageddon is, of course, also a pile of garbage, but this Medigo is actually an actual pile of garbage. You can't call it a mountain, but it's a pretty high hill, and it's all just remains of pottery and sort of stonework and stuff from civilization after civilization, building on top of one another over the millennia. It's deeply fascinating. So you can, like, it's an archaeologist's wet dream, really, because if you go there, you can just dig down and just keep finding new civilizations underneath the old ones, because they just keep building on top of each other, and it's just a pile of junk. Like, archaeologically and historically deeply interesting junk, sure, but it's still junk. So that's amazing. So that's Medigo. And because it's such a fascinatingly important strategic spot for the ancient cultures, there's been lots of battles around this particular area, around Medigo. And that brings me to a quote from the Bible. Oh yes. In the Bible, there is the last book of the Bible, in the New Testament. It's called Revelations, and it's all about how the world will end. And basically, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but it's all about how God will send a bunch of angels and just do a bunch of stuff. And it's all very strange. But if you have a look at it and read it, you'll see what I mean, and I just want to point out where it comes from. Because if we start at Revelation 16:14, I'm going to have to stop painting for a bit, because I have not memorized the Bible. And you know what? I don't feel bad about that one bit. So, let's have a look. Revelation 16:14, it goes, "For they are the spirits of devils, working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and to the whole world, to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty." Okay, so that's that verse. So basically, we're talking about at the end of the earth, at end of the world, at end of history, we're going to have a huge fight. Everyone's going to fight, and there's going to be like on the God side, and it's going to be like on the Antichrist side. It's going to be good versus evil. It's like the ending of Harry Potter. It's all great. Wow. So next verse, "Behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that watcheth and keepeth his garments, lest he walk naked, and they see his shame." Not sure about that verse. It's basically just like, good on you for wearing clothes, so we can't see your cock. I don't know why that's in the middle of this dramatic Harry Potter ending, but just to point out, please keep your trousers on while you're fighting, I suppose. I don't know what John's on about, but fine. And here comes the great one. "And he gathered them together unto a place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon." Ooh! Medigo, in Greek, at least transliteration is Medigon. Har means mountain. Armageddon is the mountain of Medigo. It is that place, that strategic place in the Fertile Crescent where all those battles have raged in antiquity. That is where the final battle between good and evil shall happen too. Armageddon. Why do we have the word Armageddon as the sort of like destruction of everything? It's because it's right here in the Bible. I think that's pretty cool. The rest of this, the book of that verse, just is about what happens after that, and it's all a bit nasty. And anyway, there's 15 seconds left, so I'm going to end this video now saying that it's pretty cool that the real inspiration for the movie Armageddon is both as actually a literal pile of trash. So thanks for watching very much.